And it's like, let's shift our focus from I can't to how can I? Is there something that I could actually do? Because that's how I live my life. It's like, don't say I can't. Ask myself, how can I? And then we can go a lot further in life when we do that. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Infinite Abilities Podcast. I am your host, Nick Yerhart, and we are here to encourage each other to find our own unique abilities. Let's go. All right, everyone. So today we have Patrick, and I know he's got a lot to share with you, so let's just get right into it. So, Patrick, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello. So yes, my name is Patrick Cadigan. I am the host of the Post-Secondary Transition Podcast. We are a podcast that hosts conversations about the transition process. I always say we have conversations about the transition process and literally everything in between, because it is a very individualized experience. The transition process for families, is very individualized process. And so the conversation that you have with one family may not necessarily be the same conversation that you have with another family. And that is especially true when it comes to working with students with disabilities, and depending on the level of their disability and how that affects how that affects their outcomes.
Yeah, and you're talking when students with disabilities transfer out of school. Is that correct?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
I get so used to the jargon and the lingo that
I
I
know.
kind of forget to explain that.
Yeah. Like I knew what you did, but I wanted to make sure the audience knew. So, yep.
Yeah. So the transition process, so the change from high school into the real world. And again, depending on the families that you're having the conversation with, or the students that you're having the conversation with, one of the challenging aspects of what we talk about, is that there are effectively two roads for our families, right? There are the students who are going to graduate from high school with a diploma. And then there are students who are what we refer to where we live as non-diploma bound, or on the certificate track. And typically, certificate track families these are families that are much more likely to go and need support from state agencies, outside agencies, public agencies. So there is, for lack of a better term, there's a lot more bureaucracy involved with what they are doing. And so my co-host Megan and I, we try really hard to focus the conversations to what we think that our families need to know. And we have conversations around that, and then we effectively record those conversations, and then we push them out through our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's kind of ironic because I have cerebral palsy myself, and I had never heard of a transition process until like a year and a half ago. Like I didn't go through one myself. I don't think my school even had a transition program. Like it was just kind of, you finished high school and you were on your way. And I don't know if that's because that program is newer. I graduated back in 2010, so I'm not sure if it just wasn't really a thing yet or what. But the more I learn about it now, it's such a good thing for people to get the support and the help they need as they go into the real world.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. I do know that more focus and attention has been given to it in the last couple of years. And I mean, if you and I were having an honest conversation, the reason for the focus is because the outcomes for some of the students that I work with, it's not good. But that also depends on how you define success in transition. Like there are some families who the most important thing for them is for their child to have a meaningful day, which is to say
Mm-hmm.
that they can wake up in the morning, they can get ready, they can eat their breakfast, they can go to an activity, they can be with their friends, they can do things that they enjoy doing, and that is their meaningful day. For other students, it's about getting up and slogging through another day of college classes,
Yep.
and then for those students, they might need some additional supports, and if they do, where are they going to get those additional supports? And so the families have to learn and understand that at that point, in fact, it's funny because I'm having a conversation with one of my families about this right now. Once the student leaves the public school system, their um, supports go from being entitlement driven, which is to say that
Mm-hmm.
they have to have them because that's what federal law says,
Mm-hmm.
to eligibility. And the trick with eligibility is that you have to prove it. And
Yeah.
again, in some cases, that can be more difficult than others, and you have to deal with a lot of paperwork. And like we were talking about before, there's some bureaucracy that goes along with that. Blah 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 blah. So
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot to it. And so back to what you were saying from before, there does seem to be some more emphasis on it,
Mm-hmm.
but I will tell you that when we have conversations with our colleagues, with people outside of the area that we have met through the podcast, it's still not enough, and there needs to be more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you, and it's kind of cool because my first live speaking engagement was at a transition program. So I went there and I talked to the students about mindset and overcoming challenges and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, believing in yourself, all that sorts of stuff. And it was a really cool experience, and the feedback that I got, like the students, I could tell they had like at least a slight mindset shift on their ability to do more than they thought. And that's kind of what my goal was when I went into it. It's like I know how it is to have a disability, and you get told a lot of things. You get told a lot of things that they say you can't do. And it's like, let's shift our focus from I can't to how can I? Is there something that I could actually do? Because that's how I live my life. It's like, don't say I can't. Ask myself, how can I? And then we can go a lot further in life when we do that.
It's interesting to hear you say that also because, in a way, it aligns with what a lot of the families that we work with are experiencing, which is to say that
Mm-hmm.
it is one thing for Megan and I to sit down and have a conversation about transition. But I will say that a lot of the families that we work with get their information from other families who have gone through that experience. So,
Yep.
whereas the conversations that we have are valuable, it is probably more as valuable, if not more valuable, than for the people who are living that experience to then
Mm-hmm.
be able to talk about it. But one thing, though, that's really interesting about that, and this is something else that we're very quick to talk to our families about, that one tricky aspect of transition, especially when you're dealing with agencies or individuals, providers, just anything, one family's experience may not necessarily be another family's same experience. I can
Yep.
tell you that we have had conversations with families who have worked with particular agencies and just did not have very nice things to say about said agencies.
Mm-hmm.
Then, 10 minutes later, we're having a conversation with another family, and they're like, oh, that's weird. We worked with that agency and they were wonderful. So,
Yep.
again, it really is a very individualized experience.
Yep. And a lot of things are, and I feel like especially in the special needs community, I prefer to say special abilities because I know we have our own unique abilities in each of us. But yeah, it's not one size fits all. It's very niche. You really have to focus on the individual person. So that's why I'm glad that you do what you do. You kind of you go over everything with many different types of people, which is really awesome.
One of the things that I will say that was surprising to me, so Megan and I hooked up about probably about 3 years ago, and we actually did it through. I was going through my master's class at the time. I had a transition course that I was taking, and for that master's course, we needed to have a final project, and so I had met Megan kind of as she was working at a school where I was walking out the door to go work at another school. But I just remembered who she was, and she told me about what she was doing and things like that. So when it came time for this project, I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, I'd really like to interview you." And so we sat down and we did the interview, and she told me all about transition, about what it looked like from her perspective. And right at the end of that interview, she said, it's really funny. I've been wanting to do something like this so that I can have these little, like, fireside chats, if you will, record them and then send them out to the family so that they can hear. Because, sometimes I can't be in all places at all times. And, and some people hear things better and, things like that. And I thought that was really interesting. But we have you ever had something where you have this really great point that you're gonna make, and you're
And then
like
you lose
you're
it.
just walking along? Yeah, you're walking the steps, man. You are living the dream, and then you get to your point. You're like, hey, man, I totally forgot what it was.
No, I've been there, done that many times, and it seems to have happened a lot on the podcast. Which I know you know how it is. You recorded a lot of episodes yourself. It's like you get in a group, and then all of a sudden you're like, ah, crap. No,
Oh,
but hey,
wait. I got it. I got it back.
okay,
All right. So
good.
at the end of this interview, at the end of this interview, after Megan had said, this is something that I'd like to do, I was like, okay, well, this sounds like a podcast. So we didn't jump right into it. We took about a year and we really did a lot of research. And one of the things that I had, like, that we learned, that we taught ourselves, all this stuff, was finding your niche and catering to your audience. And one of the things that shocked me, and I mean, I couldn't believe it. I looked up, secondary transition, post-secondary transition. I called Megan and I said, what other things could you possibly call this? So that, when we're trying to come up with, what we're trying to share out there, we'll know what we're looking for. And I'll tell you, we found nothing. There was nothing. So when on our website, when we say we're the only transition podcast, that's
You are.
where we are. I want competition because that's where
Yeah.
I thrive. But at the same time, I mean, again, and this is where Megan is a far better human being than I am. She's like, I'm just glad that we could push the information out to the families and that they receive it, and that is the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree. And it's always good to kind of start a new thing. Something that hasn't been done before. And you see a lot of the greats that we all know. That's what they did. They started something new. So I think it's really awesome that you guys are doing that, and you're putting your heart into it. That's even more important. You really care. You really want to help these families succeed the best way possible. So yeah, I think it's really awesome.
Yeah, one of the things that I found really interesting, I knew that, at least for myself, one of the big challenges that, as a partnership, that Megan and I have had is that when I talk to people about Megan, I always say that transition is in her DNA. She has a really interesting story. She has a sister with developmental disabilities, and she grew up watching what the struggles that her own family were having, finding those supports and services for her sister.
Yeah.
My background is very different, and I was much more just into the whole, well, I like to help people, and I love tech. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
where like my focus, was really into. I really like the technology side. But
Mm-hmm.
recently, I moved from being a special educator in specific to now a transition coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
And I tease people that I talk to all the time. I nerd out on this stuff. I love it. I'm constantly thinking about stuff to do. I
Mm-hmm.
am so thankful that Megan is patient with me because, like, I would probably call her like 10 times a day if I could. But she keeps like teasing me, saying, "No, you need to practice work life balance now." Oh, okay. Um, but um, but as a transition coordinator now, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about over the last 2 going into 3 years for me is now coming much more into focus. And then, so therefore, to your point from before, I feel like I'm a better person now because
Mm-hmm.
the worlds have collided, right? And now
Yeah.
I'm starting to get that focus, and I'm understanding more about all the things that she has taught me, over
Mm-hmm.
these last 2 years.
Yep. And that's what's really amazing about doing something, as far as like you're a partnership with her, you're learning and growing at the same time and becoming a better person and helping more people. And that's really what this is all about. This is why people become entrepreneurs. That's why we start a podcast. It's just to help ourselves grow to a point where we can help even more people. So I think it's really, really cool.
And the helping more people part, you bring up a really good point, is that that's one of the things that we have started to do. I would say, like, of course, we always say that we're very hyper niche, right? We're very hyper
Mm-hmm.
local, very hyper niche. However,
Yeah.
we have started to build out on those conversations, and uh, we've randomly emailed people and said, "Hey, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. Would you mind coming and talking with us?"
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it takes a while.
Yeah.
And to be honest, some people literally say no because radio or talking isn't their jam.
Yep.
But for the most part, we've met so many different types of people, had so many
Mm-hmm.
different conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and again, to your point, like broadening our understanding, broadening our horizons, and again bringing them back in and making the focus much sharper.
Yeah. Well, I know I've got a few people in my head that I've had on the podcast that I connect you with because I know that they would love to be on your show and have a great conversation.
Well, I will say that one of the things that, and this is a completely like side conversation, if you will, but
Mm-hmm.
you had a conversation recently with a young lady who she had written the book about she was married to the narcissist,
Yeah.
and I zeroed in on that conversation. I so enjoyed that conversation because where
Mm-hmm.
I am not someone who has had that experience. However,
Mm-hmm.
where one place that I worked at, not recently, but it was close enough. But there was a person that I had worked with who was a malignant narcissist, and so
Mm-hmm.
to hear her tell her story and to
Yeah.
hear some of the things that she talked about and some of the words that she used, it was just like, oh my God, it took me right
Mm-hmm.
back to that. And I really appreciated that conversation.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was really good.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I love about doing a podcast is I have so many different types of people who are experts in different fields. So therefore, I'm learning myself, which is really awesome. Like I get a lot of very successful entrepreneurs on the show, and I get to ask them any question I want and learn whatever I want from them without having to buy their course or their program. So that's what is super awesome about having a podcast.
Yeah, I know exactly. It's so funny that you say that because we actually have a discussion coming up. There is a gentleman who he's a YouTuber,
Mm-hmm.
and he is somebody who I have watched his channel grow over time,
Mm-hmm.
and he's seen some pretty significant growth to the point where he ended up quitting his day job and is now doing YouTube full time. I will tell
That's
you that I
awesome.
randomly reached out to this gentleman and I
Mm-hmm.
told him told him who we are and what we're doing, and he he came back. And the reason that I reached out to him was because as a teacher, I cannot tell you how many times that I have met students who were like, oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber. And
Mm-hmm.
to the
Yeah.
students, that means recording a video, pasting it online, and then all of a sudden, bam, you have 1 million subscribers, you're world famous, and everybody loves you.
Yeah, definitely not.
Definitely not, right? So I had reached out to Cody and I said, do you mind having a conversation? Because our thinking was we hear this so often, you
Mm-hmm.
know, this is a really interesting conversation to have. Again, not necessarily something that we would consider to be in the traditional route. Like I don't necessarily think that
Yeah.
people think of this in terms of transition. However, it is applicable for what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So, but and I screamed like a Star Trek fanboy when he said that he would talk to us,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, it was really so. We haven't had that conversation yet, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
again, like back to what you had said before is that we're meeting all of these different people, and when
Yep.
I met him, I did kind of throw out there, or when we met him, we said we can't pay you. No, no, no,
Mm-hmm.
no. He's like, this. I'm passionate
Yep.
about this. I want to talk about
Yeah.
this. That's okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what's cool. It's like, you find these people that just want to, help others and just, talk about what they do, and they're just open to share, which is really cool. And I think you have the entrepreneurial mindset where you realize when you get the same problem or same question over and over, you're like, all right, how can I solve that? And that's what you did. You reached out to Cody because he's a YouTube expert, and now you can help your people with that. I do the same thing all the time. It's like, all right, I get the same feedback, so let's solve this.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because I did have to send him an email afterwards, and I said, "Hey, look, I promise I'm not going to fanboy out on you when we're having a conversation." I was like, "We're gonna, I'm promise you, I'm gonna stay focused, because like I'm genuinely interested in the story,
Mm-hmm.
and um, I think that other people will be too. So yeah,
Yeah.
it really it's something that we're looking forward to."
Yeah, and another thing, I feel like we're just going to talk about whatever we want right now, and guess what? We can, because it's my podcast. But what I would say is, as far as YouTube goes and learning that, uh, Mr. Beast has a documentary on how he came about, and that was extremely helpful for me in what I'm doing. So I'm sure it will be helpful for you also.
And then where is it? I will assume that the documentary is posted on YouTube.
Oh yeah, yep. So
Okay.
Mr. Beast biography or documentary or whatever, you'll find it. So
Okay.
yeah, that was really good. I watched it. I was like, wow, that's amazing.
I have heard that he is a really interesting guy. I've
Yep.
certainly bought his chocolate bars enough that you would think I would know a
Aren't
little
they
bit more
good?
about him.
Aren't they good?
I'm buying them for my son. These are not for me. Like it's like that whole prime phase that he went through. Like all of a sudden
Yep.
everything was prime, and I'm like,
Yep.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not
Yep.
old, but I have no idea what my young son is talking about. or at
Yep.
least I don't feel
Yep.
old.
Well, that's awesome. Well, before we just continue to talk for an hour, we should probably wrap this up soon. So I do want to ask you. So my slogan is "Your abilities are infinite." What does that mean to you?
So I would say infinite ability, it basically means to not, um, don't shortchange yourself, to trust, the whatever journey it is that you're on, and
Mm-hmm.
to be able to change. Don't be afraid to change lanes if you need to,
Yep.
because very oftentimes, especially in this, like this modern world, this physical world, but then there's an online world, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's a 9x world, the ones that we're on when we're on our mobile phones. Like
Yep.
it's this interconnected world that you might have to find yourself constantly changing lanes, and to not be afraid to do that. Playing off of that, I would say to also not never, and this is really tough, but never be afraid to ask for help. And
Mm-hmm.
then,
Yep.
um, but then also never be afraid to take a step back from who you are and what you're doing, and to
Mm-hmm.
figure out, and this is huge, is what is your responsibility in the choices that you make.
Mm-hmm.
People can do things, people can say things. Like I constantly get frustrated. I feel like, especially on social media, I see people who post things about the things about something that someone else has done to them, and then therefore that has given them this outlook or something. And I'm like,
Mm.
we need to absorb the responsibility that we have in our own place. And again,
Yep.
don't be afraid to recognize that and to push and move on.
Yeah, I love that, and that goes along with what my mentor Grant Cardone says. He says, "Take full responsibility for everything. Everything in your life happened because of you. Nothing happens to you; it happens because of you." And
Mm-hmm.
at first, when you hear that, you're like, "Yeah, okay, whatever," But then when you actually sit down and realize, like, okay, that bad thing happened. What did I do to put myself in that situation to allow that to happen? And you can really look at things and be like, wow, I really did kind of ask for that to happen. And once you become aware of things like that, your whole life will improve because you'll start to notice things when they're just like a red flag before it gets worse. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
Well, and also playing off of what you said, one of the other things that I think is interesting, and this is something that can be challenging, is also recognizing that there are two sides to every story.
Yep.
And being patient with yourself, but also being patient with other people too, because we just don't know
Mm-hmm.
what they're going through.
Yep. I'm definitely with you on that. Everybody's going through something, and we don't know what it is. So yep, I agree. All right. What's one thing that you would like to leave with the audience?
Hmm. Helping people. It was funny because I was thinking about that earlier, and it was kind of like I was saying that Megan's DNA is talking about transition, spreading transition, because that is something that she watched. When I
Mm-hmm.
started to think about where I fit in on that, mine is about helping people, and
Yep.
it could be, it does, and it doesn't have to be a podcast. It doesn't have to be. It can just be offering to help someone, and
Mm-hmm.
I that that's my nugget. That's where I come in.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Patrick, this has been really great. So thank you for being on the show. And I have a feeling
I
we'll be
enjoyed
doing
it.
another one.
Fantastic. No, I've really I continue to listen to your discussions. I cannot
Thank you.
I've said it before, the amount of content that you have. I don't know how you do it, because we post every 2 weeks, and that's like, I mean, we're busting at the seams, and you're just cranking stuff out, and these are good. This is good stuff. So well
Well,
done.
this is my third podcast for the day. So, yeah. But you're my last one. Thankfully, this is the last one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you do it. It takes me 2 weeks just to get ready for the one that we do. So yeah, hats off to you, sir. Hats off to
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. All right. Well, we will talk soon.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this show, please go ahead and share it on your Instagram story and tag me in the Nick Yerhart. Also, go ahead and share it anywhere else that you see fit, because the only way that I can grow this is by you guys sharing it. I don't sell anything on here. I don't have any sponsors, so let's just get it out there by word of mouth and help more people. Alright, everyone, remember, your abilities are infinite.